this question didn't begin with 3 sorries in an email. It began earlier, with someone learning that disappointment was dangerous, and that arriving small was the safest way to enter a room. A Quiet Answer, Episode 03. I started an email with 3 apologies. It's late and I'm sitting with a draft I haven't sent yet. The first line says, "Sorry for the late reply." The second line says, "Sorry if this is too much." The third line says, "Sorry to bother you." Then the actual question. Which is small? A single ask. Nothing has gone wrong. I read it again, and I notice, none of those sorries are about anything that happened. The reply isn't really late. The message isn't too much. I'm not bothering anyone. The person on the other end probably hasn't even thought about me today. But the apologies are already there. 3 of them. Stacked at the top of the message like a small wall I'm building before I walk into the room. I delete one. I put it back. I delete it again. I add a different one further down. I rephrase the whole opening so it sounds less apologetic, and somehow it ends up sounding more. I haven't sent the email. I'm just rearranging sorries. And eventually the question comes, quietly, while I'm staring at the cursor. Why do I keep apologizing for things I haven't done? Why do I say sorry before I even speak? I closed the laptop and the question stayed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a crisis. It was just the kind of small notice you sometimes get about yourself, late at night, when nothing else is asking for your attention. Why does the apology come first? Before the request. Before the question. Sometimes before anyone has even said anything to me. A quiet answer came. Maybe saying sorry became a way to enter a room softly. That stopped me. Because it's true that I do that. I open doors quietly. I knock and then half apologize for knocking. I email and apologize for emailing. I ask, and apologize for asking. Like I'm trying not to disturb the air. The sorry isn't even an admission of fault. It doesn't refer to anything I did wrong. It's just, a softening. A way of saying, please don't be upset that I'm here. A way of arriving small. We pay tolls just for entering rooms. Once I started looking, it was everywhere. There's a coworker who starts every meeting comment with, "Sorry, this is probably stupid." Her comments are not stupid. Her comments are usually the sharpest in the room. But she pays the toll first. There's a friend whose texts always begin with, "Hey, sorry to bother you." She isn't bothering me. She's asking if I want to get lunch. There's the woman in the cafe who said sorry to the barista for ordering oat milk. The barista didn't even hear her. There was nothing to be sorry about. Oat milk is on the menu. And then there's me. Saying sorry to the door I'm holding open for someone else. Saying sorry when I'm the one who got bumped into. Saying sorry when I have to ask the bus driver if this is the right stop. None of those sorries were about wrongdoing. They weren't asking forgiveness. They were tolls. Paid in advance, for things we hadn't done yet. In case we were about to take something we weren't sure we were allowed to take. Another quiet answer came. I once heard about a person who grew up in a house with a low doorway. Every time they entered a room, they lowered their head a little. They didn't think about it. The body just knew. Years later, they moved into a house with tall doors. The kind of doors that don't ask anything of you. But their bodies still bowed. Before every room. For years. Nobody had asked them to bow anymore. The body had simply learned the shape of safety. That's what most of my sorries are. Not requests for forgiveness. Just an old shape my body learned in a house I no longer live in. The apology arrives first, just to make sure the rest of us can come through. I learned to take up less than I needed. I sat with this for a few days. I tried to remember the first time I apologized for something I hadn't done. Nothing specific came back. But the pattern came back fast. I was the kid who didn't ask for things. Not because no one offered. Because asking felt like risk. If I asked and was told no, that was bad. But if I asked and was told yes, somehow that was almost worse, then I had taken something. So I learned to want less out loud. When I needed help with homework, I'd say, "Sorry, this probably doesn't make sense," before showing the question. The question always made sense. I was apologizing for needing help. When I was hungry on a long car ride, I'd wait until someone else mentioned food first. Just so I wasn't the one who needed something. In my first job, I kept apologizing to my manager for asking questions. He finally said, "You don't need to apologize for asking." I said, "Sorry." Then I noticed I'd said sorry. I apologized for that too. We both laughed, but I felt heat in my face for a long time after. I had become someone who kept the sorry handy. Just in case. Just in case my hunger was inconvenient. Just in case my question was wrong. Just in case my presence was, somehow, a thing that had to be paid for. I didn't choose this. I learned it. And the learning happened so quietly I never noticed it as learning. I thought it was just who I was. Maybe I apologized before anyone could be disappointed. So I asked again, more carefully. Why do I do this? Why does the sorry come before there's anything to be sorry for? A quiet answer came. Maybe somewhere, someone once said it gently. Maybe you learned to apologize before anyone could be disappointed. I sat with that one for a while. Because it tracked. Somewhere, in a house I no longer live in a year I can't pin down, I figured out that disappointment was dangerous. Not just sad. Dangerous. The face of an adult whose hopes had landed on me and then sagged. The quiet after. The way the air changed. So I learned to apologize first. Before they could be disappointed. Before the room could turn. The sorry was a buffer. A small, soft preemption. If I apologized first, maybe their disappointment had nowhere to land. Maybe I could absorb the blow before it arrived. Apology became the price of being in the room. Not a price anyone charged me. A price I started charging myself. You apologized, but you didn't get permission either. Here's the strange part. The apologies don't actually work. I send the email with 3 sorries and the person replies kindly. I make the comment that opens with sorry and the room responds well. I order the oat milk and nothing bad happens. By all measures, the apology did its job. But I don't feel relieved. I feel something else. A small flatness afterward. Like I successfully crossed a bridge but left part of myself on the other side. Why? Maybe you got the answer you wanted, but you didn't get the permission. I let that sit a long time. Another quiet answer came. It is like knocking on a door, hearing someone say "come in," and still standing outside with your hand on the knob. The answer arrived. But the body did not believe it was allowed to enter. Because the answer was the small thing. The big thing was the permission to be a person who sometimes needs help, sometimes asks for time, sometimes shows up imperfectly, without paying a toll first. That permission, I never got. You are not a burden for needing time. I know that as a sentence. I don't know it as a feeling. The sentence sits in my head while the feeling sits in my body, and they don't always speak to each other. Needing time is not an offense. But the body believes its own past more than it believes a sentence. So I keep paying the toll. Sorry for the late reply. Sorry to bother you. Sorry if this is too much. The toll gets paid. The bridge gets crossed. But the part of me that thinks I should have to pay never quite gets the news. The audience was never in the room. So who is the sorry for? The boss isn't reading it carefully. The friend doesn't notice. The barista doesn't even hear it. The person I'm emailing has 8 other emails open. I started paying attention to who was actually receiving these apologies, and it was almost never the person I was sending them to. Maybe the person you keep apologizing to is not even in the room anymore. That one took the breath out of me a little. Because it was true. The apologies, all of them, were going somewhere else. Past the friend. Past the coworker. Past the recipient. Going to a quieter place. A version of someone, long ago, whose disappointment I learned to fear before I had words for fear. That person isn't reading my emails now. They're not in the meeting. They're not at the cafe. They might not even remember the moments I'm still rehearsing. But I'm still apologizing to them. In every line. In every soft entry. In every small bracket of sorry placed before any sentence I'm afraid might land wrong. I've been writing letters to a room that emptied out a long time ago. Maybe I was not asking the world to forgive me. Maybe I was asking it not to leave. And the people actually here, the friend, the coworker, the partner, have been overhearing them. Politely. Without ever being the audience I was really speaking to. Taking up space is not a debt. So how do I stop? After a while, a quiet answer came. Maybe just notice. Don't even try to stop yet. Just notice it. The body has its own pace. It learns slowly. It might unlearn slowly too. So the sorries are okay. They might be a kindness you give yourself, for now. The world doesn't always know how to receive a person who arrives full size. Maybe somewhere, the permission you've been waiting for never had to come from outside. That last line stayed with me longest. Because I've spent so much energy paying tolls. Sorries. Preemptions. Soft entries. Each one a small payment toward a debt that nobody, anywhere, was ever charging me. Then one last quiet answer came. I once heard someone say it more simply, to a child at a table. You do not need to bring a receipt. For the chair you are sitting in. The chair was already there. The meal was already shared. You were not invited so you could prove you deserved the invitation. I held that one for a long time. But I notice now, when I write an email, that I'm reaching for the sorry. The buffer. The preemption. And sometimes, lately, I stop. And I write the question without the apology in front of it. I send it. My hand still shakes a little. Because part of me is waiting for someone to write back and say, you didn't apologize first. But mostly, no one says that. The world is more forgiving than the voice I trained myself to expect. The reply was never late. The message was never too much. I was never bothering anyone. I was just here. And somehow. Still. That was always allowed. Cross-reference. An apology that arrives before any wrongdoing, paid in advance, like a toll, by someone who learned that arriving small was the safest way to enter a room. End of file.